Hello. I'm going to admit everybody. Welcome. Great to see your faces pop in. Eduardo, fantastic
Hey
to
there.
see you. And we have Aaron and Rain, Benita. Nikita, do you want to stop sharing just for 1 minute? We'll see everyone's faces just in one spot for a minute. Hi, Miriam.
Hi.
And then we can go to sharing. Hi, Brisa.
Hi. Hi. Oh, sorry, my video is not working for some reason.
No problem. We're just going to wait for a few more people to pop in. While you are here, it would be fantastic to have you pop in the chat where you are in the world, your name, and what intrigued you about this live learning event on future-proofing your career. Everybody's in different stages of their career. I know everybody on this call so far, so we would love to see what comes up. And I know Nikita, who's going to be our guide today, she will get to see. As we have people from Canada, Slovenia, US, Portugal, UK. Let's see who else pops in the next couple minutes. Oh, amazing. I know, I don't see any, there we go. Oh, Aaron, you're in Nanaimo. I didn't know that. You're a little misleading with your Golden Gate Bridge in the background.
Yeah, I just like the filters. It's better than my blank wall. So
Right. Mississauga, Toronto. Miriam's from Toronto. Amazing. Living in Slovenia. Isa's close to me. She's in Quebec. And Miriam is also close to me in Montreal. So good to see you, Miriam. I'm so glad you made it.
Nice to see you too. It's been a while.
Yeah. Miriam's my cousin, FYI.
Hence the same last name.
Okay, that's wonderful. Well, we will wait to see if anyone else pops in, but I think we can just get started. I want to welcome everybody in to this amazing session today. And this session is hosted by me and Hope Braintrust. Let me just let people in. Some of you know about the Hope Braintrust. I'll just remind those who are popping on new today. It is a character-filled space online and in person. Yes, we sometimes do in-person events designed for and by this growing global community of educators, innovators, and entrepreneurs. There are plenty of communities to be part of, but I believe this one is truly special. Over the past year of hosting these events, I have seen this space evolve to be a place where you'll meet courageous and willing people you may never otherwise be able to meet. My name is Hope Patterson. I'm a mother of two. I always like to begin with that grounding statement. I'm a coach and a global education innovation specialist. I'm on a mission to shine a spotlight on people, working to support and innovate education and an entrepreneurial mindset for our future generations. If you're not part of our Hope Braintrust membership and want to participate in weekly and monthly connection and collaboration events, all about elevating your work and approach to an inspired life, please hop in to the link below in the chat. I'm going to stick it in there right now. Right here. And we network, we collaborate, we share, we learn and grow in a truly supportive way. Today's special guest is Nikita, Khandwala I will hand the mic over to her to introduce herself and dive into our topic for today, future-proofing your career. But first, I just wanted to say how inspired I've been by Nikita's energy, creativity, and artistry of what's possible. She's shining a spotlight on what's possible for the future of work and life, and is sharing her knowledge, her experience, and heart with as many people who need to know that you can build your future to what you want it to look like. I'll be in the background for this 90-minute live learning, and please share your comments, questions in the chat below, and I'll do my best to respond. And there's going to be some breakout rooms in the last part of this session, and I want to invite you to be brave and dive in, interact, take part. That's where you're going to see the impact and connections. So over to you, Nikita. I'm just going to spotlight you. Go.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Hope. Can everyone hear me? Perfect. Thank you for the thumbs up. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your days to join me in Hope. And before I dive into this rather emphatic statement that you can see on your screens, I just want to say a massive thank you to the wonderful Hope, who in the education and future of work world, we often refer to as the fairy godmother of education. She's an absolute superstar, and I'm so grateful that she's given me a platform to share a lot of the things that I want to share with you today about future-proofing, how to make yourself irreplaceable, and as a couple of you have already said in the chat, how to think about the context of AI as you continue or start building your careers. So with that, I will go on to, in a sec, tell you a little bit more about myself. But first, I want to talk a bit more about this. So today is the day you become irreplaceable. Quite dramatic, I know. But what I want to emphasize is that future-proofing yourself is very much a career-long and lifelong journey. It's not something that is going to happen over the course of the next 90 minutes. But the aim of today's session, and why I'm really excited to share the space with you all, is I want to introduce some concepts to you that have been really radical in shifting my perception of what a meaningful and purpose-led life and career actually looks like, as well as many people that I've worked with before, from people who've actually recently graduated and are just starting out on their career journeys, all the way to people who have decades of experience and just want to radically rethink how they're learning, how they're building, how they're thinking about purpose in their career and life. So with that, I want to start by critically assessing one quite fundamental assumption that we have. Hope, sorry, I don't know if you're trying to say something, but you're muted. Okay. Yeah, so I want to start by inviting us all to critically analyze one pretty fundamental assumption that we make about our careers pretty much from the very start. This is how most people think their career is going to look when they start out. Pretty linear, straight line. You know, there's not much going on there. What I found is that what it actually looks like is a little bit more like this. So to give you a bit of background on who I am, I graduated from the University of Oxford a few years ago and thought to myself, it's a pretty good university. Someone will surely want to hire me for something, right? I was eventually proven right after many rejections and failed attempts. I landed my first job at LinkedIn in Dublin, Ireland, and was super excited about this opportunity of a lifetime. But then I hated my job. I had a degree in languages and linguistics from a brilliant university, but for some reason, I decided that data was my calling as soon as I left university. And so I got a job as a strategy and data analyst at LinkedIn. And yes, I did soon start to question, what had I been thinking? So after being there for just over a year, I decided to try and start a company. I missed the pace of the startup world. I'd worked a lot in the startup space before, but unfortunately got ditched by my 2B co-founders. So then I thought, okay, might as well do the next best thing. Let's venture into the startup world in a different way. Let's find some people who are on an incredible mission in the education space, who I can really get behind and try to add some value to. Except I unfortunately ended up having to deal with quite a toxic workplace and culture, and really started to question, was there something wrong with how I was making decisions? I really feel like there might have been. I ended up leaving after 10 months, after getting some much needed advice from people much wiser and more experienced than myself, and decided to go freelance and start supporting people on their own journeys. One of the clients that I worked with was a new university in London called the London Interdisciplinary School, and I absolutely loved working with them. I worked with them on everything across growth, fundraising, talent acquisition, and I had never felt like I belonged to such a mission-aligned team and organization. Except then, of course, me being me, trying to start a company again. You know, the context being that I'd met the co-founder of my dreams. Now was, of course, the time to do this. Except I was wrong. Cue career pivot and, of course, existential crisis. The point of me going through this early part of my career journey as a quick introduction to myself is not to make you think that I'm totally mad, but more to show you that the shape that is on this screen is often what more and more people's careers actually look like. This is what I like to call a squiggly career. It's very different from that linear trajectory we saw on the first page. That is sort of the narrative that we're fed when we're in school and university. You know, you need to make these decisions when you're 18, 16, 17 years old, and then stay at the same company for decades on end. Whilst that used to be true, we're seeing this trend change given the plethora of opportunities that both the age of information and now the age of AI are opening up to people. And so with that little bit of background, some more dramatic statements for you. One thing that I noticed very early on in my career was that this narrative that everything needs to exist within straight lines and boxes actually wasn't true. I found that when I graduated, when I had my first job, as I've been building my career since then, I always had to assign some sort of label to myself. I'm a linguist, or I'm a data analyst, I'm a growth person, I'm an educator, I'm a consultant. I never really found spaces to actually express who I was as both a person and a professional. It was at that point that I started to realize I don't actually have to choose a path. I can create one. And even more than creating a path, I can create a portfolio that is unique to my experiences, motivations, and missions, and where I can really add significant value to the people that I work with in a way that, because of those unique experiences, pretty much no one else could. So on that note, hello again. I'm Nikita. I am a creator, a consultant, and what I like to call a future-proofer. I spend the majority of my time nowadays helping both individuals and organizations think about how they can future-proof themselves for a rapidly changing world of work. As many of you have mentioned so far, AI is, of course, a big topic on everyone's lips right now, both in the tech and education world and beyond. And I will be talking a little bit about AI today, but I also don't want that to dominate the discussion. And I really want us to kind of open our minds to what AI really means for the entirety of our lives and careers, as opposed to just specifically at this moment in time. So on that note, by the way, just before I go on, I would love for this to be a very interactive session. If you want to ask a question or have thoughts or feedback to share with the group, feel free to just unmute and shout out. I also can see some comments in the chat. I can't quite look at them at the same time, but if there is anything urgent, feel free to, I can, and you can also pop your hand up if you want along the way, and we'll just bring you in. Perfect. Thank you, Hope. Cool. So let's continue. What is future-proofing? So when I tell a lot of people what I do, their immediate reaction is, how can you future-proof people? I mean, is that really possible? You have no idea what's coming, just like the rest of us. And you know what? They're right. I can only make educated guesses based on my research, my work, my network, the people I speak to, like many other people out there. The thing is, the way I think about future-proofing is not necessarily about knowing exactly what's going to happen and then reverse engineering our paths to today. More so, it's about ensuring that we have as much agency and autonomy as possible over intentionally crafting our own careers and lives, so that whatever the future may throw at us, we're going to be not only prepared, but we're also going to be able to absolutely thrive. So the analogy that I often like to use, which is borrowed from Reid Hoffman's book, The Startup of You, if anyone has read it, is that building your career is like building a company where you're the CEO. Your career path is the product. Your reputation is the brand. Your mentors, peers, and advisors are the employees and board members. And the market is, well, the market. Today, I want to go through 8 fundamental principles that I have used personally myself and teach people about how to build the company of you so you can thrive in the future of work, whatever that looks like. So, first up, we have identifying your values. It really has often surprised me, and honestly, surprised me even more because I realized I was in this category of people until just a couple of years ago, who had very low values literacy. Now, what do I mean by values literacy? Whenever we make a personal or professional decision to move to that country or quit that job or marry that person or have that child, we're often making a decision that is grounded very firmly in our values, right? But what I found as I've worked with people and coached different people is that very few people have actually articulated what their values really mean to them. What I found since actually going through that process myself is that not only knowing, but really articulating and living by my personal values has allowed me to make much more mission-aligned decisions throughout my career so far. This is quite a woolly thing to say, I think. People talk about values and theories of change and things like this. And I'm always like, give me a framework, please. So that's what I'm going to do today. This is something that's very inspired by an organization called the School for Social Design. They talk a lot about how to create more humane tech products. And they have a framework around crafting values that I absolutely love and wanted to share with you. So this is one of my values, as you might be able to tell. And essentially, this value is made up of 3 parts. The first is a context. So to take hope as an example, if you don't mind, let's say that when Hope is facilitating a group of wonderful humans in her Braintrust, she wants to pay attention to a certain thing in her body language, in her mind, in her language, in the way she's interacting with others, because that's something that she derives a lot of meaning from. So Hope, if you don't mind, would you mind giving us an example of something that in a context like this, you would love to pay more attention to because you derive meaning from that?
Yeah. So in this context of the Hope Braintrust, I would like to pay attention to how I am collaborative with the people in this group. It's really important to me to build bonds with people, to make those connections feel real, so that I feel like I am making an impact on people's lives. So I will, bring warmth out. I will try my best to weave those connections. I will try and instigate collaboration so that those values are met.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing, Hope. What Hope did that was really beautiful, I think, because not only did she think about something, you know, to use the word collaboration, something that she really wants to pay attention to when she is facilitating these types of events, but she was really great at actually identifying the kind of meaning that that gives her. And you can see another example on screen here that's one of my own. Muchness is, yes, a word that I made up, which is something I tend to do quite often, as that's something that gives me meaning. But I found that actually when interacting with others, sometimes I felt a little bit shut down or blocked in some of my values. And so having now articulated this value that I should be as exuberant as possible and really kind of act in a way that is true to who I am, I would derive way more meaning from my interactions with people than if I were trying to be someone else, or if I was kind of shutting myself down in some way. So we'll come on to kind of
Nikita,
what this looks like.
1 second, I just need to say an amazing holla to muchness. I just want to reflect that back to you and do what I like to do, which is just see you in your zone. You are definitely shining with muchness, and we can feel it. Keep rolling.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What a lovely thing to hear in the middle of Braintrust. Brilliant, cool. So that is kind of fundamental principle number 1. Principle number 2 is about crafting your theory of change. Now, I would love to know after this what kind of industries and spaces each of you work in and come from. But you probably know that the theory of change methodology is something that exists and has a lot of attention in the social impact and social entrepreneurship space. That's a space that I used to work in, and I was always confused as to why this wasn't a framework that we had applied to a personal career. And so the reasoning behind me deciding to build my own framework was basically that I realized you have about 80,000 hours in your career. 80,000 hours is a lot of hours. And I had this realization at a similar time as when I'd started shedding those narratives that I'd learned throughout my educational journey that, you know, I needed to be on a linear trajectory, and making my career decision was a one-time thing. I wouldn't do it, you know, every few years or whatever that might look like. It made me realize that actually making any choice about your next career step is actually one of the most important choices you can make, because this really is where we're spending the majority of our time. But actually, it's not a one-time choice, as I've said. And so now we have our values. What's actually guiding those decisions that we're continuously making? That's when I crafted a theory of change framework that basically marries your values with your mission in life. And honestly, people talk about purpose, mission, visions in terms of their companies and their careers. I'm always a little bit skeptical, because I think that 5-year plans, 10-year plans, all this kind of thing, they really work for some people. But often it takes experience and going wrong and facing obstacles and completely failing or sometimes succeeding to actually realize what direction we want to go. And so while I don't think it's important that we have a rigid plan, I actually heard this great quote the other day on a podcast where someone said, there's no point in making rigid plans because any well-made plan is going to be blown up by 6 months of growth. And that's kind of the mentality behind this theory of change framework. So now imagine, right? You've got your values, you've got your theory of change. How do you actually figure out what unique value you can add to an organization? This is often something that the longer we progress through our careers, the better we get an idea of, you know, what we love, what we find effortless, maybe what we actually hate and really don't want to double down on. But I think of a unique knowledge stack as essentially the intersection between your personal experiences, knowledge, and motivations that you're uniquely positioned to talk about and build for. Now, some people refer to this as specific knowledge. Some people call it a unique knowledge stack. But really, the visual that I want to put in your minds is of this one on the left. So if you think that, you know, your skills are in that first circle, Then in the Venn diagram in the middle, you've got your skills and your experiences. The one on the right is where I really want to encourage people to focus, because at the center of that Venn diagram is the marriage of your skills, your motivations, and your experiences. And that's why it's called the unique knowledge stack, because I've done a couple of these workshops similar to this for university students. And one of the most common questions I get is, but I don't, like, what unique value do I have to add? I have exactly the same degree and background as this guy sitting next to me. I don't really have that much work experience. I've kind of come from a similar background to him. Like, what do I have to add? And my response is pretty much always the same, because I've very much been through that kind of pattern of thinking as well, which is, sure, you might have had the same job as someone, you might even have the same skills as someone, but no one has the unique intersection of the reason that you're doing what you're doing, the experience you've built in doing that thing, and all of the skills, the network, the connections that you've built up going along that journey. And that is the unique knowledge stack that I'm really trying to get you to think about.
Nikita, can I say
yes.
one thing to that? I love that you're bringing it up, because I would further highlight that it's not only students leaving university that would be looking at their work or their life in this way. I would say there's people of different ages and stages in their career on this call. And I would say this is something that's relevant to everybody. I hear from people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s saying, well, I don't really have that much unique to offer. So I just wanted to call it out and say that I hear it in all stages and ages.
100%. And actually that kind of broad applicability of this is exactly why I've added these questions on the right of the slide. Because I found them to be really helpful frameworks and triggers to actually think about, what are those things that, whatever stage of your career you're at, are totally unique to you? This is one I really love, but what's something you don't consider a skill that your loved ones notice you do effortlessly? I've always found that question incredibly illuminating, because we simply don't see the things in ourselves that the people who love us most and work with us most see on pretty much a daily basis. You often even don't think of the things that you do naturally as skills, because you're like, oh, it's just play, right? It's not really work. So I invite you kind of during and after this call to really reflect on some of the answers to those questions, and bring the people around you into those conversations as well, whether it's your colleagues, your co-founder, your partner, your friends, your parents. These people all have so much lived experience of being with us and seeing where we thrive and where we light up. Use that to help you figure out your answers to these questions. This is one of my favorite quotes that I just want to highlight from David Epstein's book, Range, where he talks about how powerful generalism is in a world that prizes itself on specialization. Our greatest strength is the exact opposite of narrow specialization. It's the ability to integrate broadly. And I think that really speaks to that Venn diagram, right? And that intersection very, very well. So on to the next one. And before I go on to this, I just want to pause for a second and ask if anyone has any thoughts they want to share, questions they want to pose to either me or the rest of the group at this point.
Feel free to just put your hand up if you want to. What, if anything's really resonating? Rain, love to hear from you.
Hello. That quote that you just put on, I feel like I don't really hear things like that a lot, and I'm happy I saw it today, because I always feel like, well, how do I just do one thing when I'm like doing all these things and like doing all these things and and like, even if I try to narrow myself down, I end up doing the other things as well anyways. So anyways, it's just cool to see that quote, because often it's like niche down, specialize, like be clear on. It's like, okay, and like I'm a human who wants to do like everything and just learn it all. Right. So that was cool to read.
Yeah, I'm so happy that resonated, Rain, and I imagine that's probably resonated with a few people on the call. If that did resonate, I'd really invite you to read the book. It honestly, as a generalist and someone who, similar to you, Rain, constantly questioning, oh, but I want to do this, and oh, but I don't want to be reduced to this box, and stop putting all these boundaries around me. I completely feel you, and I think that book will, yeah, if you haven't read it before, you'll really enjoy it. But just one other note on that before we go to anyone else is that as human beings, we are naturally multifaceted, and living in the time of the Industrial Revolution, where we built education for the purpose of rote specialization, is not the world that we live in anymore. And by the way, I don't want to give the wrong impression in that, in saying, we don't need specialists. Of course we need specialists, and excellent expert specialists are often the people who push boundaries of innovation and, push progress of our world and society forward. But the really beautiful thing about the age in which we live is that it's actually easier than ever to gain broad, integrative, interdisciplinary experiences. And we also have the opportunity to let them shine in however, in the way that they want to shine. I get that in the working world, it's sometimes really difficult to do that. And Rain, similar to you, I've definitely come up against that barrier before. One thing that I found quite liberating is this idea of the portfolio career. So I'll go on to talk about this in a little bit, but being able to spend your time across different pursuits, being able to speak to the different things that you love doing and get energy from without feeling like you're tarnishing your personal brand or your image as a professional. But yeah, always happy to talk about that more if it's of interest. Any other questions, thoughts, things that resonate? Cool, let's move on because I think I don't want to get too behind time. But so this is one that I do want to focus on a little bit, especially on the topic of AI. So I'm involved in quite a lot of conversations with both organizations, some policy folks here in the UK and others about what are the skills that we really need to be thinking about for the future of work. What should we be teaching our young people? What should we be teaching career switchers? What should I, as a business leader, be teaching my employees, et cetera, et cetera? And the thing that I've come to realize is, one, no one has a good enough answer yet. So if you do, please shout. But secondly, one of the most important things when we do think about the skills of the future is actually thinking about how can we create brilliant thinkers and doers, regardless of the way that technology is going to evolve over the next years and decades. And on the right of the screen, you'll see 4 things that I think are of ultimate importance in this conversation. The first, and my favorite one, is the ability to continuously learn, unlearn, and relearn. I think, particularly in today's world, that is unfortunately quite full of things like polarization and identity politics and toxic social media and things like that. We often take things that we hear and see at face value. And what that means is that we inadvertently unlearn our natural critical thinking skills. We stop asking great questions, we stop considering other points of view. And this filters into how we feel about learning things on a professional basis as well. And so if there's one skill that you focus on, I know it's a bit of a metacognitive skill, but one that's incredibly important is finding ways to really instill this kind of, or build this muscle in you, learning, unlearning, and relearning. The second one is systems thinking. So to add on to what we were talking about in terms of the beauty of generalism and interdisciplinary thinking, systems thinking is something that can really, really, along with mental models actually, help you unlock a new way of looking at something or solving problems that people around you who maybe do come from a specialist background actually don't do as much. So the combination of systems thinking and mental models is incredibly important to just make you a brilliant thinker in whatever area or discipline you're working in. And lastly, tool literacy. And now this is one that's probably the most difficult because it is the one that constantly changes, right? Right now, one of the most important tools you can really learn to use is an AI tool like ChatGPT. And obviously we've seen the evolution of that tool, even over the course of the past kind of 3, 6, 9, 12 months, has been immense. And it's really, really easy. I have definitely felt lost at points in kind of getting lost in the technology, getting lost in the advancements, and forgetting actually what you're really, really aiming towards. And so what I'd say is the first three are very timeless, durable skills that will serve you at any point in your career, regardless of what the future throws at us. The fourth one is something that you need to be open to, and that's why the unlearning and relearning is important. You need to be open to kind of putting yourself out there, being open to failure, being open to being a beginner. And there are so many great ways that you can learn these skills along with others as well. And if you're interested in learning more about how you can learn more about AI and how you can integrate it into a work, again, very happy to discuss that later on as well. I see a lot of comments in the chat. Anything anyone wants to bring up?
I think people are just lots of high fives and they're
Love
resonant.
high five.
Yeah.
Makes you feel like
Go ahead.
Nikita, it's Rob Patterson. I'm Hope's dad. First of all, this is wonderful. I want to just comment on the unlearning, because I'm coming from this at the other end of the lifespan, right? And I have to say that holding on to a model or behaviors that actually aren't appropriate anymore is a very dangerous thing, but it's very human. So just an illustration. Many years ago, I was hired by NPR to help all 600 stations understand that the new way was a two-way flow between the listener and the station. And we went through a massive process to help people get that. I would say we did very well. I'd say about 10 or 15% got it. And the rest were prepared to have their station die before they would change. And so I think the unlearn bit is much more difficult. That most people would rather die than change. And there's a whole world of work to be and I actually think that you're wasting your time on people who are rigidly holding on to something that is not going to work in the future. And I love your model, but I think the unlearn is the hardest part, and I don't know of any way of getting people to do that.
It's it's a great point. Lovely to meet you, Robert, and thank you so much for sharing. I've definitely seen things like that happen countless times as well. And I think that because unlearning requires such an identity shift and requires us to fundamentally reassess beliefs and opinions we've held for potentially decades, right? It is understandably the hardest part. And that's why I actually think, even in the education system, we're never taught to unlearn anything, right? It's only ever additive. It's very rarely subtractive. And so I agree. I think it's the hardest part. But I also think that's why it's probably one of the most important parts to focus on. And if you can build that muscle, that's what really makes you incredibly valuable to an organization or even to yourself. Fabulous. Okay, moving on then. So the next part of our kind of framework is doing the job before you get the job. And more than anything else, this is really a mindset shift that I really encourage, again, people at any stage of their career to grasp hold of with both hands and kind of live throughout their career. Whether you want to be a manager, a business owner, an employee, a freelancer, a portfolio careerist, whatever, being what we call a permissionless apprentice, which is a concept coined by a guy named Jack Butcher, is a way to essentially spot an opportunity or spot something that you can add value to, build a solution and share it with the people that you can, whether that's an organization or a specific person that you can add value to. And if you've ever used this concept in your career to get a job or get an opportunity, you will already know what a powerful unlock this is, because less than 1% of people applying for jobs do it this way. As you saw from the first couple of slides, I've had quite a few jobs. And I've only ever got one job through applying in the traditional way. Every single other one of the opportunities or positions I've had has come either from building my network, which I'll go on to talk about in a sec, or through taking this permissionless apprentice approach. This is the kind of thing that you honestly can't really talk about that much. You just have to do it. But some of the activities that we'll be doing later in breakout rooms will speak to that better than I can now. Great, so we're coming to the end now. One of the last concepts is this idea of creating a portfolio of leverage. Some of you may have heard of an entrepreneur and kind of philosopher called Naval Ravikant, but he talks about the idea of leverage, which is essentially a way to disconnect the amount of time you invest into an endeavor from the impact or income that it generates. If you think of wage labor, which is obviously the way that most people in the world pay their bills, pay their rent, live, that is a way in which, that's a great example of non-leveraged labor, where actually the time you're investing has a one-to-one relationship with the income that you're making. If you can create leverage for yourself in the form of code, in the form of media, in the form of even connections, capital, content, you will already be way more future-proof than most people around you. The way I really love to think of this is like an investor. So imagine for a second that you are a venture capitalist, or even some of you may invest kind of as an individual. You will probably not choose, or I don't know really about your investment strategies, but I imagine you would not choose to put all of your funds or all of your kind of investment savings into one fund or one kind of stock or one bond. What you will generally tend to do is to hedge your bets, right? You will tend to spread your risk across a portfolio of stocks, bonds, whatever it is that you're investing in, to maximize your chances of return. And over time, your investment portfolio will compound in value. That's exactly the way that I encourage people to think about their career portfolio. Whether you are someone who kind of has, you're a full-time marketer, let's say, and you've had a few different jobs, every time you've built projects that you can actually share and say, this was the impact that I had. I drove conversions, I drove subscriptions, whatever the metric was, by this percentage. Or if you're a software developer and you have a GitHub repo where you're showcasing all the different projects that you've built, all of those things are things that will compound in value over time as you build up that portfolio. What this relies on is your ability to turn your ideas into reality very, very quickly. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to just whiz through the rest. But the penultimate one is making your value visible. This is something that is probably one of the most contentious principles that I have and that people ask me about, because it's all about showing value or, creating value as opposed to saying to someone that you can do it. Our job application processes currently and historically have always prized people telling you what they can do. Say I'm a hiring manager and say Aaron is applying for a job at my company. He's probably going to send me a CV. He's probably going to send me a resume. Sorry, he's probably going to send me a cover letter, maybe a project that he's done, but honestly, probably not if the application form doesn't ask for it. On the other hand, I get an email through from Miriam, and Miriam says, hi, Nikita, I saw that you have this open position. I think I could add value. And actually, not only do I think that, but I've built something that I think would actually solve this problem that you're having. I saw that you don't have very good translation on your website. So I built something with the help of AI, perhaps, that automatically translates your website so you can get to a broader international audience. I click on the link, I see this tool, and I'm like, oh my goodness, Miriam's just solved one of these massive problems I had that I didn't even know how to solve myself. She hasn't asked me for anything. She has just delivered value permissionlessly. Who am I going to give the job to? Probably Miriam. Sorry, Aaron. So that's just a way that I like to demonstrate the power of taking that permissionless approach and really just showing rather than telling. Okay, and then the last one that I want to draw your attention to is this idea of a personal board of advisors. So if you go back to the beginning of this deck and think about how I spoke of this idea of the company of you, one of the most powerful things to remember about building a company is that no one does it alone, or some people do, but it's pretty rare, and that's awesome for them. But for most of us, we need people around us. We need advocates, we need supporters, we need champions like Hope, we need communities. And actually, once you realize that your career is the same and you don't have to do it alone, it doesn't have to be this lonely endeavor, it can actually be incredibly liberating because you're not meant to have all the answers. If you succeed in showing versus telling your value, you create that portfolio of assets and leverage, you will become a magnet for a diverse range of intergenerational mentors. And there is a reason I use the word intergenerational, by the way, because I think we unfortunately live in a society where it's actually very difficult to access wisdom from people who are not in your peer group or in the same kind of age range as you are. But there's so much wisdom to be shared between different generations. I think Hope is a brilliant example of bringing together different generations so that that wisdom sharing can exist in a safe space. And I would really encourage you to think about who are the kind of people who have different wisdom, different lived experiences in your life, who you'd love to be able to call on and say, hey, I'm going through X, Y, and Z. If you were in my position, what would you do? Or I know you've been through a similar situation before. What question should I be asking myself? Anyway, on that note, I just want to put this up on the screen because I know that was quite a lot. These are the fundamental principles that I use in my Futureproof model. And I hope that even if all of this was not new for you, you've learned a little something or something in your mindset has shifted a little bit in terms of how you're thinking about future-proofing yourself in your career. Before we move into breakout rooms, I'd love to just ask if anyone wants to bring a question to the group or has any thoughts at the end of that.
Miriam.
I do have one question, and that's like, obviously this has been like a long process for you. So like, how long would you say it took you to kind of shift your mindset, like from the initial realization to like getting to where you are today?
It's definitely not a short process, and I'm definitely not very far through it, honestly. I think it looks differently for everyone. It can take decades for some people. It can take maybe just a few years for others. But if you think about it, we've been, depending on kind of the geography you were brought up in and the background, your parents, the way you were conditioned by school and things like that, we've probably all been conditioned to quite a large extent by those factors, right? I know in my own personal experience, I went through pretty much 20 years of life before I started unlearning some of these fundamental assumptions that I had about work and life. And it's also not a realization that happens overnight. You're not suddenly like, oh my goodness, it's because I don't know what my values are that I'm never going to have a thriving career or whatever it might be. It's something that actually I've taken a long time to kind of put this framework together, and it's something that works for me personally and works for many people I work with. But actually, there are probably parts that you particularly feel like, oh, you've never really thought like that before, or maybe that's really what's going to accelerate you towards your next milestone or goal. So embrace the fact that it's a lifelong process, because it is very much a mindset shift more than a kind of one and done exercise. Miriam, I think
Yeah. Miriam, just
I was
one
just gonna ask. Yeah, sorry. I was just gonna ask. So I'm a fresh grad, and the idea of do the job before you get the job, or like sell yourself by showing what you can do, to me is a little, I want to say like less achievable. So I would just wonder what you would do if you were like 23, just graduated university. Like I've done one internship, but it's like compared to oftentimes what they're asking on the job market, it's like you need 2 years of experience, but they also don't want to pay you for those years of experience.
Oh my gosh, it's that vicious cycle of You need
Yeah.
experience to get experience, obviously.
Yeah.
No, Miriam, it's a great question. And I will send you a great article on this later. But the short answer to your question is, remember I spoke about permissionless leverage, this idea that actually, if you want to, and I'll actually just go back to the slide really quickly because it's quite helpful. This slide. So all of the things that I've put on this slide, blogging, tweeting, speaking at events, maybe less so speaking at events, but YouTube videos, TikTok, GitHub, these are all things you can do with zero permission and pretty much zero experience. The internet is a rich and broad enough place where you can teach yourself to do most things. Obviously, you're not going to become a medical doctor online, but that's not what we're aiming for right now. If you do want to add value to a company because you think that actually they're the dream company and you'd love to work with them, why not create a bit of content for them? Why not showcase that actually you've taught yourself how to use ChatGPT and have actually created a content backlog for them that they can use for the next 4 months? That doesn't require that you have 2 years of experience. And yes, you're right that some organizations might be like, so set in their ways, and don't get me wrong, this does happen, that they're not willing to accept that, okay, even though you've demonstrated value and put it in front of them, they'll give you an opportunity simply because you don't fulfill the criteria that they have. But often what happens, and I've seen this countless times, is that if you take that approach, employers and hiring managers, founders, whatever, will see that you have initiative and an action to bias that pretty much anyone else who's applying won't have demonstrated, because they will be held back by the fact that that job description says you need 2 years to even apply of experience to even apply to this job. I think it's similar to that thing that I said at the beginning of the presentation, which was we have these fundamental beliefs that we need to act within certain boundaries and rules and regulations that we've been taught from the get-go. And when we've applied for internships, jobs in the past, we have been told, oh, you need to apply this way, submit the CV, format it this way. Who has ever actually, like, who is the objective entity who has ever said, this is the only way to do this? Because if you ask yourself that question, you'll realize no one. It's just a shared reality that everyone, most people in the world are in. And as soon as you can shift your mindset to break out of that and realize that you can actually create your own playground and your own rules, the leverage that you have and the potential that you have just increases exponentially.
Thank you.
No worries. Deegan, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, yes. I would just love to add to that as someone who's 25, so not much older than you, Miriam. One factor in the wage gap is that generally men will apply to roles knowing that they can learn while they're in the role, and women will wait and say, well, I don't have the experience, I need to gain the experience. And so something that I've definitely done and reaped benefits of is just remember your experience that you have matters and be confident in it. And then as you continue on, you'll definitely learn in your roles. So again, I'm 25, I don't know it all, but that's what I've done in my 3 years of work experience so far.
Great addition. Thank you so much, Deegan. And Isabel, I think you have your hand up too.
Hi, well, first, thanks for the brilliant presentation, Nikita. I also wanted to react to Miriam's comment and ask you a question after. I don't know you, Miriam, so but if I speak for myself, I remember when I was starting like you, TikTok and all those things did not exist yet, but even if they would have existed, I would have freaked out to start doing this because I was a very shy person. So for me, this was not an option. It didn't feel natural at all to try to create something and send it out. I wish I would be like that, but I wasn't. So my idea at that time was, yes, to try to find a job which I felt, like Nikita said earlier, was the perfect or dream job to start with, but it actually didn't work out. So at some point, I grabbed the first door, the first opportunity that opened to me, which was not exactly what I wanted to do in life, which was not exactly what I dreamt to do, but had something to do with where I wanted to go. and accepted that job, stayed in that company for 6 years. And it was really like a springboard for me to eventually move from another company and another opportunity to become the professional that I am today. So again, I don't know who you are, but if it resonates to you, sometimes not to be so present or publicly to shine publicly is, I believe, not necessarily the only way to make your way through that professional.
The same.
world.
I'm not very good with social media.
So this said, what I wanted to add, I really relate to a bunch of things you've said, Nikita, and notably the idea of don't wait for everything to be all set and perfect and totally clear before to try something. But I wanted to come back to one of the first elements that you presented in your presentation. I didn't want to comment at that point to let you develop, but I would like to have, if you have any idea, advice, or whatever. It's a topic that I've been discussing a lot with Hope in the past few months. I'm actually in a situation, to make it clear, I'm referring to that suggestion you made to build a kind of a 360 skill set, or try to, be curious and learn not just, one thing very, very specific, but to open up to as many aspects of your of what you like. This is a natural for me. So that's what I've been doing pretty much from the start, even before I started to work. But I'm at a stage right now where this is definitely a huge strength for me. So I can confirm, based on my experience, that when you do this, it can become a huge asset and an incredible way to differentiate yourself from others. But there's a challenge, or a bunch of challenge, that comes with that too, which is at some point just to first be able to resume that and explain that in a simple way without sounding like a peddler that, masters everything, which is not the case. But anyway, but also to not to lose your focus, which is my case right now. So I'm in the food sector. I'm a food and health professional. And super curious. There is no topic around food and health that is not of interest for me. But yes, so I'm in a situation where opposite side, it's almost too much, or I don't know anymore how to manage that and to leverage that so that it's truly a strength and not a huge bullet to pull every day and try to maintain all those skills. Anyway, so not looking for a course or anything, but if you have any reflection in regards to that, I would love to hear it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Isabel. And it's definitely, it's hard. I've definitely struggled with this myself, and I think to make sure I understand your question as well, and hopefully so it's helpful for others here as well, trying to balance between building that kind of unique intersection of experiences and skills, and therefore not being confined to sort of one label or one job title. How do you balance that with other people's need to be able to kind of put some sort of label to you, or be able to very easily understand what you do? Is that the tension that you're trying to resolve? Okay.
Totally.
I think that, and I'm gonna give you some, hopefully it's helpful, but a very practical pointer here, because I think it's a difficult one to resolve. And what I'd say is, over time, as you build up the skill set and you build up this portfolio of leverage, I don't know if you journal or if you are a big note taker or anything like that, but one exercise that I love is just continually taking notes about learnings that you're having, about yourself, about the world, about anything that you're working on. And in the process of doing kind of a retrospective on those notes, you start to do a lot of pattern recognition, and you start to see, oh, I got a lot of energy in January from doing this workshop for a bunch of business leaders. Why was that? Was it because people were really engaged, or was it because there was a great energy in the room, whatever? And then you can see that, oh, in August, I did something similar. Maybe that makes me an enabler, or maybe that makes me a facilitator. And if your end, I would say like it's really helpful to have your end goal be almost to be able to present people a one-liner of who you are and what you do. So mine has become, at this point in time, I'm a creator, consultant, and future-proofer. Again, it's a made-up word, but that also speaks to who I am and what I do. And it also encourages people to ask questions. And ultimately, you're not trying to give people all the answers in that one-liner. You're simply trying to open a conversation, right? And so those are the two main tips, I'd say. Journal and really reflect, do that pattern recognition process so you can understand yourself better and then learn to communicate it to others. And then really aim for that one-liner, something that resonates with you, that really speaks truly to your values and who you are, and go from there. Is that helpful?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much.
No worries. Cool. Any more thoughts, questions?
Eduardo.
Yes, thank you. And thanks, Nikita. Great presentation, great insights, really, food for thought. I was wondering, can you go back to that slide where you have like a wrap up of the day?
Yes, of
with the bullet
course.
points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, da, da, da. There you go, that one. So what would be the 20% of this list that would produce 80% of results, if any? It might be the case that they are all equally important, but what would be your take on this?
Yeah, excellent question. And a question I've actually never been asked before, which I love. Let me have a quick think, because I'm being pulled in a couple of different directions here. Honestly, and I kind of hate when people give this answer because it's a bit of a cop-out, but I'll explain in a second. I think that when you are building your career, everyone has a different motivation, a different objective, a different stage of that, right? And also, as both kind of Miriam and Isabel have mentioned, people have very different personality types. So some of these principles may ring way less true for some of you than others. If you're an extrovert, if you have really strong action to bias and you love putting yourself out there, doing the job before you get the job or creating a portfolio of leverage, the whole personal brand thing might really resonate with you, but to someone else might feel like they want to cry. And I just want to emphasize that that's completely okay, because again, we are all multifaceted and we need to embrace ourselves as we are. If I were to pick just kind of one fundamental principle that, regardless of all those factors, I think can really, really help people throughout their careers, it would have to be one of the first two. So identifying what your values are and really crafting that theory of change. I say that partially from personal experience and from people who've been through this with me and have gone through that and just had a fundamental shift in what they deem important and how they make decisions. But the reason I mainly say that is because if you think of your career as a house, right? Everyone knows that if you have built a house on a shaky foundation, it's not going to last very long, right? The windows are going to start cracking, the walls are going to start crumbling. I see your values and your theory of change as the ultimate foundation for the house, the mansion, the castle that you're trying to build that is your career. And therefore, I would really encourage people. This is also probably the hardest part of the process, by the way, because it requires real introspection and a shedding of narratives and beliefs. But if I were to have to pick something, it would be one of those two for that reason. But great question.
It makes a lot of sense. It's like your moral compass, isn't it? Your values and all that. All right, good stuff. Thanks.
Out of interest, Eduardo, what would you choose to be the kind of 20%? I guess
I would probably the same as you, because again, it's the moral compass. So it's like it's your moral compass. I would also pick the number 4, because as our lifespan increases, probably those 80,000 hours you were mentioning before will soon be, 90,000 or whatever for someone, doing primary school these days, because they will live until 110. I don't even know. So probably I would also pick number 4, because it's really that ability of learning how to learn and constantly shift in your career and learn new things and so on and so forth, that will make you be relevant throughout those 90,000 1,000 hours of your career.
Yes, I love that. Thanks for picking up on that one. I completely agree.
Yeah.
And Eduardo has this on his brain. He's definitely at a hub of learning in Portugal with Brave Generation Academy. I'll put a link in there for everybody. Thanks, Eduardo, for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hope, could I just use a minute?
Yeah,
of course.
On values, I think if you describe values slightly differently, it's easier to get. Values suggest a moral issue, as Eduardo was saying, but I think it's actually attributes. It's who you really are. You start with who you are, and it's very important to be truthful to yourself. So if you are an extrovert, you know you're going to be useful in all those areas where being an extrovert is useful. If you are an introvert, that shuts that side of life down for you, and you need to focus on that. To Miriam's point, you may not have any business skills, but you have attributes as a person. So if you are very diligent, you can tell stories about why you're diligent, right? You don't have to have had a job before that. That there are, if you are very creative, you can show that you've done things in your life even before you've ever had a job that demonstrate that you really are creative. So I've found, by the way, I love this list, and it's the list that I've been using for a very long time, and we've never talked before. But I think if you use the word attribute and you turn the mirror, you look in the mirror and say, who am I really? And what are the habits of thought and action that are deeply ingrained and unlikely to change? That's who I am. And it's very impressive when you're with a hiring manager. He's looking for you to have 2 years experience in whatever skills it is, right? But if you can actually say, I'm extremely diligent and hardworking because I actually handled 3 jobs and my school and all this kind of thing, and I've learned how to sort all that out and deliver on all of them. That's a real accomplishment. And most people will ignore that conversation. So I could go on for hours, but I think Miriam and anybody can be leaving school and reflect on their life and go, yeah, I have got various qualities that are mine that I can give an employer, and those qualities are eternal. And other people may not have them, and the hiring manager may not even have thought of them herself.
Love it. Hence the reason why you need your personal board of advisors of all different generations and perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Robert. I actually would really highlight that as well. I think it's very easy when you're applying for a job to think that the only thing you really bring are skills or experience. But actually it's so true. We bring so much more than that because, and this is the advantage of human employees over AI employees, right? That actually we bring characters and personalities and attributes that others don't necessarily have. And so don't believe that those are worth any less than tangible hard skills just because they're not easy to quantify or they're not easy to describe. They're still probably even more valuable than those things.
Question for you. It's 1:10, and I'd love to have a show of hands for people who are game to hop into breakout room to do a little brainstorm, little connection. If you want, we have, say, 15 minutes for that right now. But I'd love to see who's able to stay on, who'd like to have that conversation and that interaction. And then I can make sure to build that in. We have a couple. And then the rest, does everyone else need to hop off? You're good? Okay. I'm just going to hop everyone into once Nikita explains. I'll just pop you in and feel free to hop out. But these breakout rooms are often the best because you meet people that you wouldn't otherwise meet and have great conversations. Over to you, Nikita.
Thank you, Hope. Okay, so we are short on time, and that's 100% my fault. But I think, yeah, as Hope said, it will be great to just give this exercise a little go. So for the next 10 or so minutes, not 30, you're going to help Katerina future-proof her career using some of the principles that we've just learned. So if you have your phone on you, you can scan this QR code to access a quick fact sheet, but I will also share it in the Zoom chat now. Give me 1 second. And on this sheet, you will see that you basically have a bit of a bio for someone named Katerina. It tells you a bit about her background, her personality, her passions, her career journey so far. We want to help Katerina figure out what her next steps are going to be. And so there are a list of activities at the bottom that Hope and I wanted to let you choose from. One is creating a list of dream organizations for Katerina to work with based on what you know about her from this fact sheet and some of the things that we've talked about today. The second one, which I think is a really great one, is actually putting the permissionless apprentice approach into action. So finding an opportunity to add value to a dream company and actually ideating a solution. What's something Katerina could build? What's some valuable things she could share with this company to increase her chances of success? There are a couple of other activities there around values, board of advisors that you can also do, but we're going to leave that to each group in the breakout rooms. It would be great if you each kind of had a scribe just to write down your thoughts and learnings, and then we'll come back in for roughly 5 to 10 minutes to just feedback with each other, and then you can get on with the rest of your days. Any questions on that? And let me know if you haven't been able to access the fact sheet.
So we've got 10 minutes, and I'm going to pop you in. And as these roll, what I love is you just be flexible. Check out the fact sheet. Just dig in. And Miriam and Aaron, are your hands up, or you're just saying you're okay? Dig in, please. Go ahead.
Nope, sorry, I was still raising it from being able to join a room.
Okay, great. I'm going to pop you in and interact and chat, and we'll come back in about 12 minutes, and people can share. And if you have to hop off, I'm going to follow up with everybody. Thank you so much to see everyone's faces here, and Nikita, if we don't see you again.
Thank you all for joining. See you in a sec.
Okay.
I haven't been able to look through it because it just popped up for me just now.
I can share the screen, and then we can go through that. How's that work for everyone?
Yeah.
That good?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Do you feel like you're at school? We have to do our homework.
Anyway, yeah.
Oh, that's not it. Let's put it in here. Can you see the future proofing facts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing. So who wants to read it out loud? Miriam, do you want to read it?
Sure. All right. So Katrina is age 31, and her personality is enthusiastic, eager to embark on new ventures and learn new things. She is a people person and thrives in environments where she can interact with others and build strong connections. She's adaptable, lots of curveballs in her life, but she's mastered the art of going with the flow, and she is ambitious and has big dreams and is very mission oriented. She's from Asheville, North Carolina, has a bachelor's in anthropology from North Carolina University, and is also taught herself digital marketing and graphic design. She is multilingual and can speak English, conversational Spanish, and beginner's Mandarin. She's a big traveler, Europe and Southeast Asia, loves food and cultures, and pairs photography with her travels, documenting her journeys. Community building, big believer of building communities and volunteers to help local initiatives. her career journey, and I'm abbreviating, guys, just to get through this quickly, but her career journey is she's been a museum guide. She worked at a local history museum. She has been a freelancer for 1.5 years, and I guess her travels have inspired her to take that up. She's been a marketing associate at a startup for 3 years and leveraged her self-taught digital skills to lead campaigns in social media outreach. She's a community manager for a co-working space, tapped into her people skills hosting events. She's been a brand marketing strategist for 2 years at an NGO and merged her love for community building with marketing skills to advocate for environmental causes. Her current challenge is she's desiring to have a more profound impact on her community and globally, searching for a role that lets her use her diverse skills and passions cohesively. Her role models are Brene Brown for her insights into vulnerability and human connections, Sir David Attenborough for his lifelong dedication to educating the world about nature and cultures, and Payal Kadakia for staying true to her values as she built a unicorn company. For anybody who does not know, it's ClassPass. So that's it. And so we have a bunch of activities.
Nice reading. Awesome.
Thank you. I can be your next host. There's 5 activities. I think everybody was talking about number 2, but you can either create a list of dream organizations for Katrina to work with, or find her an opportunity to add value to a dream company and ideate a solution. Use the value frameworks to identify 3 of Katrina's core values. Make a dream list of, I don't know what that.
No,
that doesn't
it's like it's not finished.
Yeah, I have it here. Make a dream list of Katrina's personal board of advisors. Or number 5 is use ChatGPT to craft a personalized learning journey for Katrina to stay ahead of the climate crisis.
Ooh.
Does anybody have any preference in terms of which activity they'd like to do?
What do you say? Eduardo's face is like.
I'm like for 1 or 2.
Go ahead. Anyone?
I like 3 as well.
3. 3?
Okay.
2? 3 or 2? 3. How do you feel
I
about
would say 3.
Use the values framework to identify 3 of her core values? Do you want to do that?
Sure.
Okay.
That might be quick. Sure.
Okay, cool. This is a pretty good profile. I like the sound of her. Okay, so we do need the values framework for this though. Who has it? I can pop it up. We need to go get it. I think, Eduardo, do you have it up on your screen, the values?
No, I don't.
I don't either.
Let's pick number 2. Find an opportunity to add value to a dream company and ideate a solution. I'm just going to come in and change it on you because we don't have the values framework right on the screen. So and this is super creative. Any ideas looking through her? What could be a dream organization for her? And what could be a solution for her to like permissionless provide some value? What do you think?
Something with community and language, perhaps. I wish I could like see everything a little bit clearer.
Something
and it has something that has like an international feel, so that I think there's like a travel component to it.
Like that. So community feel, international, travel component.
And clearly she's got a desire for, like, leaving out the community piece, she's just got an interest in nature. When you think about David Attenborough, and I think her connection there, it has to be a very impactful role.
Yeah.
I think also maybe using her photography within a role in whatever company this would be.
I was thinking about National Geographic, like, those crazy photographies that they have. Obviously about nature and traveling around the world.
Yeah. So how could she add value? That is one example. National Geographic could be one, or similar organizations to National Geographic that she could go in and provide value. Maybe sounds like she's also got some experience in like marketing and brand strategy that she could bring in the mix. What kind of permissionless value could she offer to an organization like National Geographic with that suite of skills?
Those are like send a portfolio of what she's done in terms of photography, and then like the marketing associated with said photography, like to know how to market your own product.
Mm-hmm. It's an idea. I like the weaving and the photography. What could be really valuable to, like, it's interesting, something that would leverage her skill but would land on the other end is like, oh wow, I didn't know I needed that. That's super valuable. Because it's flipping the lens of like, yes, you're going to benefit or she's going to benefit, but how is it going to benefit the
Mm-hmm.
So what about creating a new set of kind of product? Imagine like a podcast or a YouTube channel with a lot of conversation and narratives about the travelings that she has done in the past, with images and so on and so forth. And she could piggyback that on the how prestigious National Geographic is, and kind of tease them into making this a new line of business with like a proof of concept. Like, this is a proof of concept. I have the portfolio of images of my travelings, the way I perhaps write about them, kind of an idea, a concept, and tease National Geographic.
The
Miriam,
one
what do you
thing,
think of that?
Say that again.
I said,
think
what do you
that's
think of that, Miriam?
I think that's interesting, but I was looking at her community manager for a co-working space, and when you look at organizations today, and I don't know enough about National Geographic, but what I haven't figured out is, have they actually like built a community? Like, they put out a lot of content, but I don't know if they've been able to build a community. And so for me, I would ask, could we use her skills in a different way to help us build a more active, vibrant community? I just, like, whenever I think of, like, I never think about following National Geographic on Instagram or anywhere else. I just wait for something to come on Netflix and I'll watch it. But it isn't front of mind to say, oh my God, these people could be directing my everyday feed or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah, I really like that.
So how would that look in practice?
She could, like, have we ever had a National Geographic sponsored event? You could have like some of these big ones. I actually am kind of curious to go see what their Instagram page looks like now.
They have a ton of followers. They have like over 280,000 followers.
280,000 is really dismal.
Sorry, million. I meant million.
Okay, perfect.
Nice. We are about to close the breakout room, so let's come back and we can say that, who wants to round it out here? I really like the all of the contribution. I like the proof of concept and teasing some way of, I like the podcast YouTube, but I do also think she wants to build an active community or be part of that. I'm just thinking of what would be too much to handle. Like, if she's going to do it permissionless and provide value, she's not going to be able to do a huge event, or but a podcast and a YouTube she could do on her own and leverage what they're already doing and tease them out and showcase. I love that.
Agreed.
Okay. Eduardo, you want to present for us? I'm going to close.
Oh, please don't.
Okay. I thought Eduardo took off because he was like, no, I'm not going to present. That was really fun and very fast. But I like the strategic thinking and ideation. That was great.
Yeah, maybe we can just do, Hope, depending on what you think, like one key takeaway from each group.
Sure. I'm always the one speaking. So Miriam and Miriam or Eduardo, do you want to share any takeaway? We don't have to share what we were going to do, but any thoughts?
Not all at once, though.
Yeah.
I think it was a nice intersection of ideas that we had. That's the key takeaway. We kind of, in the glimpse, we needed to understand who Katerina was, what are her what triggers her, and so on and so forth. And with we've basically used the intersection of values, skills, and knowledge, and whatever to intercept that in the blink of an eye and come up with some ingenious solution. I guess that's my takeaway.
And quickly to build on that, would you use this with your students, with your university students or your students at BGA, Eduardo, as a...
Absolutely, particularly with the adult ones, because it's really about setting the values with them, making them see forward and what their career will be, and so on and so forth. And yeah, absolutely, in a nutshell, yes.
I can see it.
I'm just going to quickly intervene for 1 second. And so we only had 10 minutes. So it was a much faster exercise than I think we would have otherwise done. And what I felt was like we took her experiences and we still tried to bring her back to that. But really, part of what would have been interesting is to see, hey, what would we do that was different from what she's done? We were always connecting it to her social media, her experience. But part of our challenge is going to be, how do you take the existing set of skills and change that for an evolving world? And I just don't think we got that time, but that would have been an interesting exercise to say, hey, if we wanted her to be, I don't know, like a speaker of something, like what would those gaps need to be and how would we get her there? That would have been an interesting conversation.
Yeah, great feedback. Totally. Cool. Aaron or Deegan, do you want to just give a quick takeaway from our breakout?
Sure, I can go ahead. Yeah, so we struggled a bit because it was such a creative, curious person with so many various interests. I think probably the interesting thing is that we thought about a variety of careers, but at the end it was like, well, Nikita was in our group and she asked us, well, what would you do if you were in her shoes? And I said, well, I would optimize for like what job would give me the most time and like the most freedom in my own life. Because once you've built a career and you're in your like 30s and 40s, building those long-term meaningful relationships you have with the people you've met previously in your career, like that's with whatever you do, I think is a really important thing.
Awesome. Aaron, Eduardo, and Mariam, thank you so much for sharing. On that note, I think we can wrap up. It's been a pretty speedy session all round, but thank you all so much, not just for joining, but for staying until the very end. I will just share my screen quickly for one last thing, but all just to say, this is, as I said before, very much a lifelong process, and it's not something that happens in the flick of a switch or overnight. But if you do have any more questions or you want to talk about anything, my calendar is always open. And if you really want to get more kind of into this idea of future-proofing and really act on it, I run a fellowship called the Futureproof Fellowship, which will be launching in October, focused on helping career switchers and starters build the company view. I also have a bunch of free resources on my website and things like that, so feel free to scan the QR code or just reach out to me directly. Would always love to chat. Thank you so much.
I'm going to be sharing all of this. I'll follow up as I do with an email. And such a pleasure to see you all. And if you made some connections and sync ups that you need my help to support, you know where I am. I'm in your corner. Thank you so much, Nikita. It's amazing to hear you share so freely. Very inspiring, and people find Nikita. Have a wonderful day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, I'm here.